Welcome to my YouTube channel. My guest on Facing the Canon is Gary Grant, founder and chairman of the Entertainer Toy Shops. Gary Grant, welcome to Facing the Canon.
Good afternoon.
It's great to have you, Gary. We've been friends. I was trying to remember this morning, but I think we've known each other for about 30...
I think it's 30 years.
30 years, it has. We've been great friends and we've travelled and ministered together. Tell us what you do.
Well, I play all day. I, as a family business, own a chain of toy shops called The Entertainer. And we also trade online. So we buy and sell lots and lots of toys. We employ just under 2,000 people. I have 173 shops in the UK, 50 in Spain, a very busy website. And we're 2/3 of the way through what's turning out to be a very challenging year.
Absolutely, yeah, and we'll talk more about that. But I like the story, how it all begins. In a bicycle shop, that's where the story sort of begins. Tell us that story.
So I left school at 16. I didn't get on with school. I did all my exams and failed most of them, but I did get an O level in those days in maths.
Yes.
And as a child, my parents were divorced when I was 3. So therefore, as I grew up as a child and even into my teenage years, if I wanted anything, because we had no money at home, I had to go out and earn the money. So I found all sorts of wheezes to raise money, earn money, whether it be sort of penny for the guy, which some of your older listeners might remember.
I remember.
In those days, beer bottles had deposits on them, so I used to collect beer bottles and take them back to the off license and get, 1 and 2, 3 old P before we went decimalised back on those. And I had a paper round and worked in my Michaela's sweet shop. I worked in a bike shop towards the end. But as I left school, the part-time job in this bicycle shop in Amersham became my full-time job when I left school. And then shortly afterwards, probably 1976, 77, so I was, 19 then, we started selling this new thing in those days called skateboards. So it was largely a piece of plastic or a plank of wood with 4 wheels on the bottom. And it was new to the market, come from America. And it was phenomenal for 3 years. But Christmas of 1979, the whole market completely finished. People stopped buying skateboards and there was surplus stock everywhere. And I started this little business on the side of my day job, working at the bike shop, buying and selling skateboard equipment and selling it to a guy who sent it to South Africa and a guy based in Bristol. And then I went to work in January 1981, and my boss had enough with me running my little business on the side, and I got the sack.
But that was one door closes, but then another door opens.
So it was because I'd been married only about 2 years by this stage, and Kath and I were moving from a village outside High Wycombe to Amersham, and I thought, well, I need a job. Kath said that I've always been unemployable, so maybe starting my own business was a way forward. And this toy shop came on the market in Amersham. We went to look at it and decided we'd have a go at toys. Yeah. So the year before we bought the toy shop, it had turned over £30,000. We opened the toy shop in May of 1981, and that first year it turned over £100,000. So there was something that we were doing which was right.
Yes.
And I just knew that, you had to buy something for one price and sell it for more. And the bit in the middle called a profit.
Yes.
And as long as you haven't got expenses more than your profit, there was a bit left over.
And that's where your O-level in maths came in.
Absolutely.
You were good with figures.
Yeah, I don't need a calculator.
Yes.
I'm pretty good with mental arithmetic.
Oh, but that was the beginning. Okay, what about your journey of faith? I mean, how did you come to faith?
Well, in 1991, we opened our 3rd shop. But I was sitting on the stairs in April of 1991, and I was thinking, but what is the meaning of life? What is the purpose of the treadmill that I'm generating, which is going faster and faster and faster? And then just literally a couple of weeks later, Cass Church had a men's breakfast. So she bought me a ticket, and in the end I agreed I would go. And I just heard this speaker just talking about Jesus and a relationship that he had with Jesus. Now, I thought, this is, I did RE at school, but they didn't talk about relationship.
No.
They didn't talk about closeness. They talked about God somewhere, maybe possibly in heaven. And it was, it just felt like what they taught me at school was a bit of a history lesson. It was about how things were, but not how they are. And that morning I left that men's breakfast, went back to work, and the following day I decided I would take myself to church. And the preacher on that men's breakfast was from Chorley Wood. So I turned up at a church in Chorley Wood thinking I might see him. And I sat in church and I had the most unbelievable hour and a half. I encountered the Holy Spirit. It was transformational. He knew that I was never going to take 2, 3, 5 years finding out whether God really existed. And God showed up for me in a significant way. And over that next week, just amazing things happened. I could have just thrown it all to one side and said, it's all a load of coincidences. Oh, that was a coincidence. That was a coincidence. But it wasn't a coincidence.
So you went to the church, left the church, and you knew that you'd had an encounter with Jesus.
Yes.
And did that become obvious to your wife?
Not that night,
No.
Because she didn't know I'd gone to church.
No.
But the next day, it wasn't the next day, it was the Tuesday, I took her out for the evening, but back to the church I'd been to. So on the way taking her out, she said, where are we going? And I explained to her what had happened on the Sunday. And now she's sort of taken aback, really, because she said, well, friends, I've been praying about you with all my friends for years. Well, for the 2 years she was a Christian. I said, oh, really? Now you tell me.
Yes.
So she was, I don't know how she felt that day, but I think it was a turning point.
Sure.
Well, in our marriage in particular, I think, how long have I been a Christian now? 30 years next year. If I hadn't become a Christian, probably would have been divorced by now. Because I was so focused on making money and business. I'm not focused on running a successful business now, but there is a little bit more of a balance.
Sure.
So it's not business before everything else. And, first of all, it's what is my faith doing? What is my relationship with Jesus doing? And we run business in that way. So I think what I've struggled with over the last 30 years is, how do I make my faith living and active for 7 days a week?
Yes.
Not have a faith for Sundays.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the challenge. But what I admire about you, Gary, is that you have this encounter with God, and you then take biblical principles, biblical values, and you're endeavoring to live them out in your business. Mm-hmm. And one of those is during the season of Halloween. Mm-hmm. And tell us about that and how that influenced the decision that you made with your toy shops.
Yeah. So I'm standing in the shop in October of 1990. So this is the October before I became a Christian in the May. And a lady came in the shop and asked for me, and she said to me, Gary, I'd like to talk to you about your shop window. So I thought, I know what's coming. And I said to her, do you normally write to me? And every year towards the end of October, I used to get a letter of complaint about my window. So he said, no, I've never written to you, but Gary, why are you selling Halloween products? And I said, because I'm in business and I buy and sell things, and that's how I make a profit. And anyway, we had a bit of a discussion. I can't remember quite what she said, but towards the end, when I explained that actually being in business means you buy and sell, she said to me, and I'm not a Christian, so she was very brave, because she got a load of sarcasm back from me at the time. She said to me, Gary, if you stop selling Halloween, the Lord will replace your lost business in other ways.
Yes.
I thought she was bonkers. I absolutely thought that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So 6 months later, I now believe in Jesus. And I'm thinking, what are you going to do about Halloween? And I think actually at the time, I might even had a conversation with you.
Yes.
And I remember you said to me, the Bible says, avoid that that even appears to be evil.
That's right.
Don't avoid evil
Yeah.
if it appears to be evil.
Yes.
And in a way, you don't need to have a discussion with everybody else and decide whether it appears to be evil, because if it's worrying you, avoid it. Because the Holy Spirit inside you is challenging you. So you don't need a second opinion. Just go with what you think God is saying. Yeah. So Halloween of October 1991, no Halloween. Had 3 shops at the time. Sales rocketed in October. And the thing is, that for me has been how I've seen God be faithful over and over and over again. But there's one little thing, because there's a passage in the Bible that has been my guiding star. It says, I will honour those that honour me.
Yes.
And what I think is true about that passage, God is faithful in that, provided, of course, our motive is true.
Yeah.
Because if we want God to do something for us, if our motive is wrong, that just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But actually, I do what I do because I think it's the right thing to do. And if God chooses to make that right, then Lord, thank you very much.
I know. And you're so right there, Gary. One of the Beatitudes says that the pure shall see God. And the word in Greek for pure is katharos. And the root meaning of that word is no mixed motives.
Right.
So who are the people going to see God? The people with no mixed motives. And it's so true what you were saying. So that was one revelation that God gave you. But then he also challenged you on another big issue about Sunday trading. Yep. So tell us about that.
So back in 1994, so I've now been a Christian for 3 years, the government changed the Sunday trading laws to allow shops to open for 6 hours on a Sunday. And John, you had started the 10 Commandments series by then.
That's right.
And I remember sitting at St Andrews and you preached about keeping the Sabbath holy. Yes. A day doing something different.
Yes.
And I was really challenged by that. And because as a Christian, I worked 6 days, 7 days a week. There was no differentiation.
Sure.
And I thought, Lord, how does now the shops can open for 7 days? How does that work? And I prayed about it from June until about September. And I remember one Thursday night, I know exactly where I was sitting, and I know the friends that I was praying with. I said, God, what's the point in praying if you don't answer prayer? Yes. And I felt the Lord say to me, Gary, no amount of praying is going to get me to change my mind. But the thing is, I probably knew at the outset that actually Sundays were no-go. Yeah. So it's not about trading on a Sunday, it's about working on a Sunday.
Sure.
So over the years, we've refined what we do, because obviously the internet's become much bigger business.
Yes.
And our internet trades on a Sunday, but we don't answer the phone on a Sunday, and we don't pack your order on a Sunday. We do all that on a Monday, but on a Sunday, the computers work, but we don't work.
No, and you've got a sign outside your store. I remember reading a sign outside one of your stores about the Sunday. What does it say?
I don't know if we have it in the stores today, but it says, we're closed today, our staff are with their family.
That's it. I really like that. Yeah. But it's so true what you said earlier on, that verse from Chronicles, those who honour God, God will honour. Well, none of us, Gary, ever thought of a year like 2020. How has this year affected you and your business?
So we've been in business for 39 years. Our oldest 2 sons are in the business. It's very much a family business. We've grown substantially over the last decade. We survived 2009 and 8, the financial crisis, and that was a really worrying time when you go into your peak trading period, and literally almost overnight in October your business collapses 30%. Yes. Because we're a family business, we don't have big reserves. We don't have an overseas parent that can just slide us more cash to keep us going. Then in the last 10 years, we've had a couple of once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. War was closed, unfortunately, in 2009. And then, unfortunately, again, 3 years ago, Toys R Us closed. So there's been a few structural changes within our industry. But who would have thought that as we went into 2010, that within a month or so, we were going to be told we'd have to close our shops for 12 weeks.
Yes.
You know, the lion's share, 90% of our income comes from stores at that time of the year, 10% from the internet. And here you are now with your income stopped, completely turned off. So for a month, it was a lonely place to be.
Yes.
Because nearly 2,000 people are reliant upon you delivering their monthly paycheck.
Yeah.
And some of those might have been the only breadwinner in that family. But you know, I employ just great normal people. These aren't millionaires. These aren't people who've inherited fortunes. They're not driving around in flash cars. These are just really committed people to our business. And over 110 of them, in fact, this year with the new people that have joined, probably nearly 150 of those staff have worked for the company for more than 10 years. This is a real commitment in the same way that they've given a huge commitment to us. And I looked at the cash burn of the business. That's the cash that we had, the facilities we had from the bank, and the expenses we had going out. And we would have run out of money in less than 2 months. We would literally have run out of cash. So businesses can survive and make a loss, but business with no cash flow could be profitable and run out of cash and still go bust.
Yes.
So I really thought, the early part of March, I really thought that nearly 40 years, my whole career was teetering on the edge. And I have to say that the UK government have saved our business. They really have. And I know that the taxpayer have had to pay out billions of pounds.
Yeah.
But they've saved. We haven't made anybody redundant. Okay, we're still going through a very difficult time. It's only October, and just this week we've been told that our Welsh shops have got to close for 2 weeks.
Yes.
So lockdown is starting again, but now it's more critical because it's in the last quarter of the year, and Christmas is the only time of the year we make any money. So we've survived the first shock, but the virus is creeping. It's the R rate, which is how it's getting higher. The risks are higher. The government are having to make difficult decisions.
Yes.
But closing our stores in the last quarter of any year, that's going to be a real challenge. So we're managing our costs, we're managing our cash, we're doing everything we can to make good decisions, but it's been a pretty pressured year.
Yeah. There's so many scriptures, Gary, like do not be anxious, do not worry. In times like this, we don't always lean on the Lord, do we? How have you found it? Have you?
Well, I think it's amazing how much you pray when you're in a corner. I commend praying when you're in a corner, but actually I commend praying when you're not in a corner as well, because God wants to be on board for the good times and the tougher times. It is a permanent relationship.
And then you've got to lean on the Lord. But what I like is that despite all that's happened, you still used your business, you used your premises, you used your warehouse to help other needy people. So tell us about the opportunity that arose.
Well, I often say that business can be a force for good. And I often also speak about generosity. And I think if you speak to people about generosity, the first thing that springs to mind is money. But generosity can be demonstrated in so many different ways. Of course, we can be generous with our money. And if we have money and we see somebody without money, I think we should be challenged.
Sure.
And that happens very regularly to me. But also we can be generous with our time. And many people have skills and talents, and the next generation needs the baton passed on. So be generous with our time. But also we can be generous with our resources.
Yeah.
So back to the question that you asked, business can be a force for good. We're in the middle of trying to hold everything together. And I get a call from one of our UK national food banks to say, Gary, you did say you could potentially help us if we needed any help with logistics. So I'm balancing all this around. But our main warehouse that would normally handle somewhere in the region of 40, probably about 40 articles of toys a week.
Yes.
is not shipping toys. So the working area is just sitting there empty. So I said, well, yeah, we can probably help with logistics. What had you got in mind? And a UK national supermarket had basically volunteered to give £15 million worth of food to go into the food bank network.
Amazing.
But arctics of food and a food bank operating out of a church hall or something, that isn't going to work. There's got to be a bit of a linking up in the middle. So over a 10-week period, we took in 300 arctics of food. The guys in the warehouse remodelled the pallet, so you didn't have a whole pallet of baked beans or a whole pallet of soup. You had some soup and baked beans and some corned beef or whatever else went, cornflakes, whatever else went out on those pallets. So that the food bank had a full selection of food, not one pallet full of the same food. And over a 10-week period, we handled 9 million meals.
That's incredible.
And I think what really churned me up was the food bank, who were regularly in contact with the warehouse, sort of coordinating the in and the out. They said to the guys in the warehouse, you do realise that the food you're handling this morning, it will actually be on people's tables tonight. That's how critical some of the areas are in the UK.
Wow.
So we made a difference, even in a time of hardship.
Absolutely.
Business can be a force for good. So I would encourage all of us to look at this concept of generosity. If we can afford to give, be generous, give. And my experience of God over the last 30 years is I've never been able to outgive God.
No, absolutely.
It might be a leaking bucket. You keep giving away, but you know what? It comes in as fast as it goes out. I'm not saying this year's an easy year.
No.
And therefore we're having to use what we have in a different way. But we do have skills and talents. We do have resources. And I would encourage everybody to make a difference, to pass that baton on in the society or the local community in which they live.
And that's something, I mean, you can be really proud of, Gary, that in this very difficult year, you used your resources to share so many millions of meals with others. I mean, that is amazing. And I know that you and your wife, Kath, and your family have been very generous and gracious in helping the needy. And you also have like quite a compassion for sick children. And I know you've helped many different places and people. But one of the ones I really like is the one where you helped with a ward at Great Ormond Street. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, so, yes. So, Kath was a Great Ormond Street ward sister.
Yes.
And I met her while she was still nursing in London, actually. And we've over the years given back to many children's charities. You know, it's the concept of tithing isn't a nice thing to do. I think it is a bit of an instruction. And the thing is about the Christian faith, if you use it as a bit of pick and mix, I'll do a few odd bits and see what you can't get the full blessing of being a Christian and being in the flow of what's going on. So very early on, we started tithing. In fact, actually, it was Kath. I've been a Christian for about 2 months, and and Kath said, Gary, when are we going to start tithing? I said, what's tithing? She said, we give 10% of our income back to the church and to charities. I said, what? 10% of our income? I said, we can't do that. We earn too much.
Yeah.
But anyway, within a month, we're tithing.
Yes.
We're on the journey, and it's been amazing. And from being somebody, maybe I wouldn't have considered myself to be mean, but looking back, I probably was mean. Looking back, thinking, maybe Gary, you were mean. To be able to sometimes stand in the crowd and know that actually we did that, or we did that. You don't have to have your name over it. So we joined something at Great Ormond Street called the TikTok Club. And what I love about Great Ormond Street, apart from the fact that Kath trained there and worked there and has still a real soft part in her heart for Great Ormond Street and for sick children, is that not only are they a centre of excellence for really sick children in the UK, but they train up doctors and nurses that come here for training from all around the world.
Yes.
So you're not just doing one little thing, you're multiplying that around the world and making a difference through the expertise and the training and the research. So we joined something called the TikTok Club, and one of the projects was of the heart and lung ward, and and this ward opened, and we had given quite a lot towards this ward or this particular wing that was opening, and one of our grandchildren was born with a hole in the heart, and within 2 weeks of this ward opening, our grandson had gone through that ward.
I know.
And it felt like, I think there's this thing in the world called, is it giving ahead or?
Pay it forward.
Pay it forward.
Yeah.
We never give because we think there's a payback.
No.
It's just that why would you do that? But to believe that we did that along with hundreds of other people, this wasn't us, there was hundreds of people that had helped get that ward open, and to be one of the first patients through that ward was humbling, actually. And it just inspires you. Do you know what? We should do more. We should be doing more. Why is it 10%? Just do more.
Yeah.
Whilst we've got money in the bank and there's people in the world with absolutely nothing, we should be doing more. We should be generous people.
Absolutely, Gary. But I just love that story that you, Kath, and the family invested in this wing at Great Ormond Street, not knowing that in fact your grandson would be one of the very first beneficiaries of that ward. And he's a healthy little boy now, which is amazing. Wonderful. Gary, you are an inspiration. It's great to see a man of conviction who basically takes the principles, the values, the teaching of the Bible and applies it to business. And our prayer for you, Gary, and your family and your business is that nothing will hinder. And I think one thing that I've learned, Gary, through this time is that, God's providence, God's got this. And I like that verse in Song of Songs where it says, winter is over, springtime has come, and the sound of doves can be heard. And well, I pray that for you and the entertainer and for other businesses that are represented by viewers all over the world. Thank you so much, Gary, for joining us on Facing the Canon. Well, that's a challenge, isn't it? To take what we believe and not just apply it personally, but apply it to everything. And, basically surrendering to the Lord our time, our talents, our treasure, and just being faithful guardians. Thank you for joining us on Facing the Canon. Please join us again.